Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on these, invisible forces that are constantly shaping your financial life. Things that affect your payslip, the price of your groceries, even how much it costs to borrow money. All right, let's just dive right in. You know that feeling, right? You get your payslip, you see that big top-line number for your salary, and you think, hey, not bad. But then you look at what actually hits your bank account, and whoa, there's a serious gap. So, where did it all go? That's exactly what we're going to break down. Okay, so the whole journey of your money, it really starts the second you earn it. But before we can figure out your take-home pay, we've got to get a handle on a couple of key terms first. So, first up, gross income. The easiest way to think about this is like the starting line. It's the full total amount you've earned before anything gets taken out. It's that big, chunky number right at the top of your payslip, before the tax man or your pension fund gets to take their slice of the pie. But here's the thing. You don't actually pay tax on that whole amount. First, some specific things are deducted. A really common one is your contribution to a pension fund. What's left over after that? Well, that is your taxable income. And that's the number that SARS, that's the South African Revenue Service, uses to figure out exactly how much tax you owe. So, and this is super important, your tax bill isn't based on your gross salary. It's based on this smaller taxable amount. All right, let's talk about the biggest deduction of all, the one we're all familiar with, tax. We all pay it, but what is it really? Like, why do we even have to pay it? And where does all that money actually go? Here's a really powerful way to think about it. Tax is basically the subscription fee for living in a functioning society. You're not just losing money into a black hole. You're actually paying for access to all the shared services we use. Roads, schools, hospitals, public safety, the whole deal. So where does the money actually travel? Well, your tax payment goes to SARS. They're the collection agency. From there, they hand it over to the National Treasury. You can kind of think of them as the CFO for the entire country. And then the Treasury is the one who dishes out that money to all the different government departments and provinces to pay for all those public services we rely on. And listen, it's not just about the income tax, the PAE that comes off your payslip. Tax is literally woven into our daily lives. You got value-added tax, or VAT, on most of the things you buy. There are so-called sin taxes on things like alcohol and tobacco. There are fuel levies baked right into the price of petrol. And yep, there are even property taxes that go to your local municipality. Let's zoom in on one of those for a second. VAT. So in South Africa, the standard rate that gets added to the price of most goods and services is 15%. It's just an automatic part of pretty much every single transaction you make. But, and this is something you might not actually know, it's not on everything. To help lessen the burden, especially on lower-income households, 19 basic food items are what's called zero-rated. That means you pay exactly zero VAT on essentials like brown bread, milk, eggs, mealie meal, and fresh fruits and veggies. So you can see the government is making a very deliberate choice here to try and keep staple foods more affordable. Okay, here's another super specific tax for you. For every single gram of sugar in a sugary drink, once it goes over a certain threshold, that is, the manufacturer has to pay a tax of 2.1 cents. This is officially called the Health Promotion Levy, but we all know it as the sugar tax. And this one little fact, it directly explains something you've probably seen a million times at the shops. A regular Coke is packed with sugar, right? So boom, it gets hit with that tax. A Coke Zero, on the other hand, has no sugar, so it doesn't. That price difference you see right there on the shelf is a direct result of a tax policy that's trying to, nudge us all towards healthier choices. Okay, now this next part is absolutely critical to understand. There's a huge difference between two terms, tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is completely illegal. That's when you deliberately lie to SARS, like not declaring all your income. That's just plain fraud, and it can land you in serious trouble with huge fines or even jail time. Tax avoidance, though, that's perfectly legal. It's simply using the existing rules to structure your finances in a smart, efficient way. For instance, making contributions to a retirement annuity to lower your taxable income, that's tax avoidance. One is a crime. The other is just smart financial planning. So that kind of covers the money you earn. But what about the money you borrow?
or the money you save? That brings us to the second major invisible force that's shaping your wallet, the price of money itself. In other words, interest. To put it really simply, interest is just the cost of using somebody else's money. When a bank gives you a loan for a car or a house, they're not doing it for free, right? The interest they charge is their fee for that service, and it also covers the risk they're taking. It's basically the price tag on borrowing money. Now, when you do take out a loan, you're probably going to run into one of two main types. First, there's a fixed rate. That's locked in. Your payments stay exactly the same, which is great for budgeting. Then there's a variable rate. This one can change because it's linked to the central bank's key interest rate, called the repo rate. So if the central bank changes that rate to manage the economy, your monthly payments can go up or down. It's a bit more of a gamble, sure, but it also has the potential to save you money. All right, on to our third and final invisible force. This is the one that makes you feel like your money just doesn't go as far as it used to. We're talking about the incredible shrinking rand, or as the economists call it, inflation. So what is inflation? It's just the rate at which the average price of everything, goods, services, goes up over time. And as those prices go up, each and every rand you have buys a little bit less than it did before. It's this silent, sneaky erosion of your money's buying power. Think about it. If your salary stays exactly the same for a year, but inflation is running at 5%, you're actually 5% poorer by the end of that year. But that raises a question, doesn't it? How on earth do you measure the price increase of everything? I mean, you can't possibly track every single item sold in the entire country. So how do they do it? Well, the answer is a clever tool called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. What statisticians do is they create this theoretical shopping basket, and they fill it with all the typical goods and services an average household would buy. Then all they have to do is track how the total cost of that one specific basket changes from month to month and year to year. And believe me, this isn't just a small shopping basket with a few things in it. The official CPI basket here in South Africa is packed with around 400 different products and services. And they're all carefully chosen to reflect what people are actually spending their money on in the real world. And those 400 or so items are all grouped into 12 main categories. But here's the key part. They're weighted. So things we spend more money on, like food, transport, and housing, have a much bigger impact on the final number. They make up the biggest slices of the pie, so to speak. And by tracking the total cost of this weighted basket, Stats SA can calculate that one single incredibly powerful number, the official rate of inflation. So there you have it. Those are the three big invisible forces that are constantly messing with your money. You've got tax, which determines how much of your earnings you actually get to keep. You have interest, which sets the price for borrowing money, and you have inflation, which determines what your money is actually worth, what it can buy. Look, getting your head around these concepts isn't just some boring academic exercise. These are the fundamental rules of the financial game we're all playing. And once you know how they work, you're not just a spectator anymore. You can start making smarter, more informed decisions with your own money, with your own wallet. The crucial takeaway here is that this knowledge is power. So the real question becomes, now that you have it, how are you going to play the game?